Welcome back to Arc Tutorials. In my career of last 10 years, I have reviewed many applications full stack which involves HTML and CSS, JavaScript and much more. Over a period of time, I have learned these 6 best practices that I'm going to share it with you for writing HTML applications. These are from practical experience, so I'm sure that this will really help you in writing HTML better and beautiful. These are must know for all the developers, especially if you're working anywhere close to HTML. So let's get right into it and learn all the 6 best practices. A quick word before we get started with the best practices. So what is HTML? HTML is hypertext markup language, which is nothing but the foundation of every website. It's the primary markup language that defines the structure and content of the web page. In this tutorial, we will discuss some of the best practices for writing clean and efficient HTML code. So the first one is semantic HTML, using semantic HTML. A lot of times I still see developers write div tags and all that for sections, articles, etc. Semantic HTML refers to the use of HTML elements that convey meaning and purpose. Semantic HTML improves website accessibility and enhances SEO. So for example, next time when you want to write a sidebar, you can use aside, right, which is an HTML semantic HTML tag. When you want to write a footer, don't use div, use footer tag. If you want to write an article, use article tag. If you want to use main content, use main. For navigations, use nav. And for say for are sections, right? Each of the sections in the page you can use section. So basically start using semantic HTML. This is one of the best practice. It makes the code much more readable, efficient and clean. The next one is using the proper indentation. This is a highly underrated practice, I would say. A lot of times, especially junior developers, I'm looking at you. A lot of times you don't put proper indentation, alignment, etc., which makes it very difficult for someone to review your code, to quickly identify where the structure closes, opens, child, nest, etc. So using proper space, tabs and nesting will make your code look much more beautiful for you also to read, to understand, and especially working with large documents, HTML pages, you'll find it very useful to quickly jump between the sections. So make sure next time that whenever you write code, you make it look pretty just by using proper indentation. Give proper spaces, give proper tabs. The third one is to optimize for performance. Okay, this is something that a lot of junior devs, or even for that matter, I see a lot of senior developers, they ignore this piece. But this is one of the things that you should consider, which is how do I load my website faster, right? So you need to optimize your HTML code for performance. Minimize the number of elements on your page. Okay, use CSS to style them instead, right? So a lot of times people will write width, height, call span, border, inline styling, etc. So don't do that. You can reduce the number of elements, control the look and feel right from your CSS. Okay, and in most real-time cases you would be using a CSS preprocessor, right, like a less or a SAS. So that makes it easy that you optimize the code, remove any unwanted CSS, remove any unwanted HTML that you don't need in that particular functionality or the page, right? So optimize for performance. This is one of the best practice, which is avoid loading too many DOM elements. If you are loading say 700, 800 auto list or a select drop down, think of making it as a request and get the data when it is actually called, right? So optimize for performance. The fourth one is using appropriate attribute values, right? Now if you don't give proper attribute values, it can harm you in many ways, right? For example, from user experience perspective, if you say not using alternate attributes for images or title tags or tooltips, those things adds for user experience as well as for search engine optimization. Which means if an image is not found, right, alternate text can be displayed and search engines will use that alt attribute for referencing what kind of an image that is. So give proper meanings, give proper data when using attribute values. That's very, very important. Don't write junk values. Image, sunrise, sunset. I've seen doing that. Login. So instead of login, you can make it like login into your account, right? Etc. Like those things. So instead of using arbitrary values, give a proper clean values that are business appropriate. Next, this is one of the most things that I keep telling my junior developers in my team, that add a lot of comments, right? Not too many, but do add the comments to explain few important pieces of as to why that decision was made for that particular. For example, there was a use case where we had to have a nested div, which will have a kind of a child nth of 10th and those things in CSS. So if you put a comment there, it makes it easy for the reviewer to understand why that is done or what's the reasoning behind it. So I don't want you to write comment for every single line of code. That doesn't make sense, and it's actually stupidity if you do that. Instead, add comments for essential pieces where you are making certain decisions, right? If you're writing a table, you don't need to put a comment. We can understand that it's a table. But if something you're doing, let's say, um, for SEO purpose, if you add a meta tag which is dynamic, or say in the table content you are manipulating a list, add a comment there, so that makes it at least understandable as to why something was done in certain way. Validate your code. Now this is something that a lot of people miss out, but it's very important, especially when you work in enterprise applications. All the enterprise applications goes through security scanning. Okay, if you work in any serious environment, um, chances are that every application, every code that we write goes through a security check or a scan. So this is where it will be caught up if you don't do proper markup validation or accessibility, etc. Right? So make sure that you validate your code against different browsers. Make sure that you validate your code against markup validation services. You validate your website or your code against the accessibility. Now, if you don't have these, chances are that you would have to rework a lot. I have done that in my past, in my junior days. I still sometimes do it. It's not something that we want to miss out, but it's something that we miss it anyway. And that's where those processes are in place to catch them. It's not that anybody is perfect here. We all are learning, and that's why I'm sharing my experience, the best practices I have learned so far with you. I'm sure there would be many, but if there are any more best practices that you know of, please do share with me and the whole community of ARC tutorials in the comment section. Your feedback, your love keeps me going. You are the motivation that I'm bringing these tutorials to you. Do also check out the best practices for Node.js, CSS, and Bootstrap on my channel. Watch out for that. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you're enjoying this series. I hope you're learning. Keep learning, keep growing. Thank you so much for joining. See you in the next episode.